They say the worst lies are the ones told out of love. I never understood that until the day I answered a phone call that wasn't meant for me. My wife was 12 weeks pregnant, and I was the last person to know. When I confronted her, she broke down and said the words that shattered everything I thought I knew about us. I was afraid you'd leave me, just like your father left your mother. In that moment, I realized we weren't just husband and wife. We were two broken people carrying wounds we never healed, colliding in the darkness, destroying the very thing we were trying to protect. Welcome to my Reddit diaries, where every story reveals the unseen battles within families. Don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? It was a Tuesday. Nothing special about it. Just another ordinary evening in October, the kind where you come home tired from work, expecting the usual routine. Dinner on the stove. Maybe a show on Netflix. The comfort of predictable married life. I pulled into our driveway at 6:30, just as the sun was beginning to set. Golden light streamed through the trees, casting long shadows across our modest suburban home. Inside, I could hear music playing softly. Sarah was humming in the kitchen. The smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the air. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. I set my keys on the counter and loosened my tie. Sarah called out from somewhere upstairs that she was jumping in the shower, that dinner would be ready in 20 minutes. I called back that it smelled amazing. These were the small exchanges of comfortable marriage. For years of them, nothing remarkable. Nothing wrong. That's when her phone rang. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, face up, vibrating against the marble. The caller ID read, Dr. Martinez, Women's Health Center. I stared at it. Sarah had mentioned a routine checkup last week. Maybe it was test results. Maybe it was nothing. But something in my gut twisted. A small, almost imperceptible feeling of wrongness. The phone kept ringing. I picked it up. I told myself I was being helpful. That if it was important, I should answer. That's what husbands do, right? We help. I swiped to accept the call. Hi Sarah, this is Dr. Martinez calling about your 12-week ultrasound results. Everything looks perfect with the baby. We just wanted to confirm your next appointment for the 20-week anatomy scan. If you could call us back at your earliest convenience to schedule that, we'd appreciate it. Again, congratulations. Everything is developing beautifully. I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember the phone leaving my hand. I just remember standing in that kitchen, surrounded by the warm glow of evening light, feeling like the floor had opened beneath me. 12 weeks. The baby. Congratulations. The words echoed in my head, but they didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Because Sarah wasn't pregnant. We would have talked about it. We would have celebrated. We would have planned. We talked about everything. That's what made us work. That's what made us different from the broken marriages we'd both grown up watching. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. My hands started to shake. Not from anger. Not yet. Just from pure, disorienting confusion. I tried to trace back through the last 3 months. Had there been signs? Had I missed something obvious? The baggy sweatshirts she'd been wearing. The way she'd been going to bed earlier. The night 2 weeks ago when she turned down wine at dinner, saying she was trying to be healthier. The morning sickness she'd blamed on stress at work. God, I'd been so blind. Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs, her hair wrapped in a towel, wearing my old college t-shirt that hung loose on her frame. She was humming that same song from the kitchen. She looked happy, relaxed, like everything was perfectly normal in her world. Then she saw my face. Her humming stopped. Her smile faded. Her eyes dropped to the phone still in my hand. I watched the color drain from her face. I watched her entire body tense. I watched terror, pure and absolute, replace every trace of peace she'd carried just seconds before. Jake. My name came out as barely a whisper. You're pregnant. I didn't ask. I stated. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Too calm. Too controlled. Like I was narrating someone else's life. Her hand went to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes immediately. I can explain. You're 12 weeks pregnant. I kept going, still in that unnaturally calm voice. 12 weeks. 3 months. We've had dinner together 90 times in 3 months. We've slept in the same bed 90 nights. We've said, I love you, hundreds of times. And you didn't tell me. Jake, please. Why? The question came out harder than I intended. We've talked about wanting kids. We've talked about starting a family. So why would you hide this? Sarah came down the stairs slowly, like she was approaching something dangerous. She wrapped her arms around herself. The tears were falling freely now. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid I'd be happy? Afraid I'd want to celebrate? Afraid you'd leave. Her voice broke on the last word. I stared at her. The word made no sense. Leave why? How? We were married. We loved each other. We wanted children. None of this made any sense. Why would I leave? Sarah sank onto the couch, her whole body shaking. She looked up at me with eyes full of something I'd never seen before. Not just fear. Something deeper. Something older. Because that's what men do when things get real. That's what your father did. The words hit me like a physical blow. My father. She brought up my father. I felt the ground shift again. Suddenly I wasn't standing in my living room anymore. I was 7 years old, hiding at the top of the stairs, watching my father pack a suitcase. My mother was 6 months pregnant with my sister, crying in the doorway. I can't do this, my father had said. His voice was cold. Detached. I'm not ready to be a father again. I never was the first time. My mother had begged. What about Jake? What about the baby? They'll be fine. You'll be fine. You're better off without me. And then he was gone. Just like that. I never saw him again. Not at birthdays. Not at graduations. Not at my wedding. Just gone. I blinked and I was back in the present. Sarah was still on the couch, still crying, still looking at me like I was about to disappear. I'm not my father, I said quietly. I know that. Logically, I know that. But Jake, I've watched you for 4 years. I've watched how you are with your mom. How you take care of her. How you never talk about him without this look in your eyes. This hardness. This determination to be better. And that's a bad thing? No. But I also saw the fear. Every time our friends announced pregnancies, you'd get quiet. Every time you held someone's baby, you'd hand it back after a few minutes, like it scared you. I saw all of that, and I got pregnant and I panicked. So you lied to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you. I thought if I could just get through the first trimester, if I could make sure everything was okay with the baby, then maybe I'd have the courage to say it. But the longer I waited, the harder it got. And then I started thinking that maybe if you just found out naturally, if there was no big announcement, no pressure, you'd just accept it and stay. Stay. I repeated the word like it was foreign. You thought I'd run. I thought you might. And I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk losing you. So instead you made sure I couldn't trust you. Sarah flinched like I'd struck her. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I ran my hands through my hair. My head was pounding. My chest felt tight. I didn't know what I was feeling. Anger, betrayal, confusion, hurt, all of it swirling together into something I couldn't name. I need to think, I said. Jake, please don't go. But I was already moving toward the door, grabbing my keys. I couldn't stay in that house. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't process what this meant. Jake. She was on her feet now, following me. Please. We can talk about this. We can fix this. I stopped at the door and turned to look at her. She looked so small standing there in my old t-shirt, her hair still damp, her eyes red and desperate. The woman I loved. The woman who was carrying my child. The woman who didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. Sarah, I'm not my father. But right now, I don't know if I'm your husband either. I walked out into the cool October night, leaving her standing in the doorway. As I drove away, I could see her in the rearview mirror, silhouetted against the light from our home, watching me disappear into the darkness. Just like my father had done 25 years ago. 3 days. That's how long I stayed away. 3 days in my best friend Marcus's cramped apartment, sleeping on a couch that smelled like old pizza and regret. 3 days of staring at my phone, watching Sarah's calls come in and letting them go to voicemail. 3 days of listening to Marcus tell me I needed to go home and talk to her. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because every time I thought about going back, I saw that look on her face when I walked out. That fear. That absolute certainty that I was leaving forever. And the worst part was, for a moment, I'd wanted to prove her right. I'd wanted to be exactly what she expected me to be. That's what scared me most. Marcus tried his best. He'd bring me coffee in the morning and beer at night. He'd sit across from me at his tiny kitchen table and try to get me to talk. But what was there to say? My wife was pregnant with my child and had hidden it from me for 3 months because she thought I'd abandon her. How do you process that? On the third night, Marcus finally lost his patience. Man, you need to stop punishing her and start asking yourself why you're really this angry. I looked up from the beer I'd been staring at for 20 minutes. She lied to me. She was terrified. There's a difference. She should have trusted me. Should she have? Marcus leaned forward. Be honest. If she told you 3 months ago, what would you have done? I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it. Because I didn't know. And that not knowing felt like falling. Exactly, Marcus said quietly. Maybe she saw something in you that you don't want to admit is there. That night, I finally listened to Sarah's voicemails. There were 17 of them. The first few were apologies, desperate and tear-soaked. Then they became quieter, more resigned. By the last one, her voice was barely above a whisper. Jake, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to meet me. One conversation. Please. There are things I need to tell you. Things about why I was so afraid. And things about you that maybe you need to hear. I texted her back at midnight. One word. Tomorrow. We met at the cafe where we'd had our first date. It felt cruel returning to that place, but Sarah had suggested it. Maybe she wanted to remind us both of who we used to be. Before the fear. Before the lies. Before we became two people who couldn't trust each other. I got there first. Sat in the same booth we'd sat in 5 years ago. Back then, I'd been nervous, excited, falling in love with a woman who laughed at my terrible jokes and made me feel like maybe I could be someone different than who I was raised to be. Now I just felt tired. Sarah walked in 10 minutes later. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing a loose sweater that couldn't quite hide the small curve of her belly anymore. Seeing it, that physical proof of the life growing inside her, made something in my chest tighten. She sat down across from me. Didn't order anything. Just folded her hands on the table and looked at me with eyes that held too much pain for one person. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I nodded. Didn't trust my voice yet. "I need to tell you the whole truth. Not just about hiding the pregnancy, but about why. You said it was because of my father." It was. But it's more than that. She took a shaky breath. "Jake, I've been watching you for 4 years. I've watched how you are with your mom. How you drop everything when she calls. How you make sure she's taken care of. How you're always there for her in ways your father never was. That's what sons are supposed to do. I know. And it's beautiful. But I also watched something else. Every time someone mentions your father, you change. Your whole body tenses. Your jaw gets tight. You get this look in your eyes like you're preparing for battle. And when our friends started having babies, when they talk about fatherhood, you'd get so quiet. You'd hold their kids for a few minutes, then hand them back like they might break. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Because she was right. I saw all that," Sarah continued, "and when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't feel joy first. I felt terror. Because I thought, what if he can't do this? What if the fear of becoming his father is so strong that he runs? What if I tell him and watch that same look come into his eyes, that same look his father must have had before he left? So you decided for me. You decided I couldn't handle it. I decided I couldn't handle losing you." Her voice broke. "I thought if you found out naturally, if there was no pressure, no big announcement, maybe you'd just accept it. Maybe you'd stay. That's not trust, Sarah. That's control." "I know." Tears started falling. "I know it was wrong. I know I hurt you. But Jake, can you honestly sit there and tell me you weren't afraid? That somewhere deep down, you didn't wonder if you'd turn into him?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I'd never doubted myself. But I couldn't. Because late at night, in those quiet moments before sleep, I'd wondered the same thing. What if there was something in my blood, some inherited flaw, that made me incapable of staying? 3 months ago, I said quietly, before you got pregnant, I started seeing a therapist. Sarah's eyes widened. "What?" "I didn't tell you because I was ashamed. I was having panic attacks. Nightmares about fatherhood. Dreams where I'd pack a suitcase and leave, just like he did. I'd wake up in cold sweats, terrified that wanting to be a father and being capable of it were two different things." "Jake, why didn't you tell me?" "For the same reason you didn't tell me about the pregnancy. I was afraid of what it meant. Afraid of what you'd think." My therapist asked me this question that I couldn't answer. She said, "What if the fear of becoming your father is so strong that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy? What if you're so busy running from his ghost that you end up making the same choices?" Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. It was the first time we'd touched in 3 days. Her fingers were cold. "We're both running from the same thing," she whispered. "Just in opposite directions." "Yeah." I squeezed her hand. And we crashed right into each other. We sat there in silence for a long moment. The cafe buzzed with life around us. People laughing, talking, living normal lives where the past didn't haunt the present. "My mom called yesterday," I said finally. Sarah looked up. "What did she say?" "She said she needed to talk to me. About my father. She said it was important. That she should have told me years ago." I paused. "Did you tell her? About the pregnancy?" Sarah nodded slowly. "When I first found out, I called her. I needed to talk to someone who understood your history. She said something to me that I need you to hear." "What?" "She said your father didn't leave because he didn't want to be a father. He left because he was so afraid of failing that he destroyed everything first." The words hit me like cold water. I pulled my hand back. "What does that mean?" "It means maybe abandonment runs in different forms. Your father left physically. But Jake, when you walked out 3 days ago, when you looked at me and said you didn't know if you were my husband, that was abandonment too. A different kind, but it felt the same." I stood up abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor. Several people looked over. I needed space to think. "I know. And maybe I deserved it. But Jake, we're about to be parents. And if we're going to do this, we need to stop running. Both of us. We need to face the fear instead of letting it make our decisions." I looked down at her. At this woman carrying my child. This woman who'd hurt me and who I'd hurt back. This woman who knew me well enough to see my fears before I admitted them to myself. I don't know how to do that, I admitted. Neither do I. But maybe we start by talking to your mom. Together. Maybe we start by understanding what really happened 25 years ago. I sat back down slowly, pulled out my phone, stared at my mom's number. If I call her right now, if I ask her to tell me the truth about why he left, everything changes. We can't unknow it. Everything already changed, Sarah said gently. 3 days ago. 3 months ago. 25 years ago. We're just finally ready to face it. I dialed my mom's number. She answered on the second ring, like she'd been waiting. Honey, I'm so glad you called. Mom, I need you to tell me the truth. About Dad. About why he really left. There was a long pause. Then my mother's voice came through, tired and sad and full of old pain. Your father didn't leave because of you or your sister, Jake. He left because he was sick. I put the phone on speaker. Sarah needed to hear this too. My mother's voice filled the quiet cafe, and suddenly it felt like the three of us were sitting together in the wreckage of old secrets. What do you mean sick? My voice came out harder than I intended. My mother sighed. It was the sound of someone who'd carried a weight for too long. Mentally sick, Jake. Your father had severe depression and anxiety. He refused to get help. Refused to even admit something was wrong. And when I got pregnant with your sister, it got worse. He started having panic attacks. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't function. He'd wake up in the middle of the night convinced he was going to hurt us somehow. I gripped the edge of the table. Sarah's hand found mine again. Why didn't you tell me this? Because you were 7 years old when he left. How do you explain mental illness to a 7-year-old? And then you got older, and you were so angry at him. You'd built this wall around that anger. I didn't know how to tell you that the man you hated was actually just broken. Terrified. That he left because he thought it would save us from watching him fall apart. He abandoned us. He did. And it was wrong. But Jake, he didn't leave because he didn't love you. He left because he loved you too much to let you see him destroy himself. In his mind, disappearing was the most loving thing he could do. I felt something crack open inside my chest. All these years, I'd carried the story that my father didn't want me. That I wasn't enough to make him stay. That there was something fundamentally unlovable about me that drove him away. But what if the story was different? What if he'd been drowning in his own mind and thought letting go of us was the only way to keep us from drowning too? Where is he now? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. He died last year, honey. Heart attack. I found out through his sister. She also sent me something. A letter. He wrote it years ago, asked her to hold on to it until you became a father yourself. She gave it to me 6 months ago. I've been carrying it around, waiting for the right time. I looked at Sarah. Her eyes were wide, tears streaming down her face. Can you bring it to us? I asked. Now. I'm already in my car, my mother said softly. I'll be there in 10 minutes. We waited in silence. Sarah held my hand across the table. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? Everything I thought I knew about my past was rearranging itself. Every memory I had of my father was taking on a different shape. When my mother walked into the cafe, she looked older than I remembered. She was carrying a worn envelope. She sat down next to Sarah and slid it across the table to me. Read it when you're ready, she said. But Jake, whatever you feel after reading it, know this. You are not him. You've spent your whole life trying not to be him, and you've succeeded. You show up. You face things. You don't run. Even these past 3 days, you came back. That's the difference. I picked up the envelope. My name was written on the front in handwriting I barely remembered. I opened it with shaking hands. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten, dated 5 years before he died. I read it aloud so Sarah and my mother could hear. Jake, if you're reading this, it means you're about to become a father. And it means I'm gone, which is probably for the best. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know the truth, even if it's too late for it to matter. I didn't leave because of you. I left because I was afraid of what I'd become if I stayed. I had demons in my head that told me I was going to hurt everyone I loved. That I was poison. That my kids would be better off without me than with a father who could barely get out of bed. I know now that I was wrong. That staying and fighting would have been harder, but it would have been right. I took the coward's way out. I convinced myself that leaving was noble, that I was protecting you. But the truth is I was just scared. Terrified. And fear makes you believe lies about yourself. It makes you think running away is the same as being free. It's not. I've spent 20 years running, and I'm more trapped now than I ever was. Stay and fight. Love your kids even when you're scared. Show up even when you feel like you're not enough. You're stronger than I ever was. You're better than I ever was. And whatever you do, don't let fear convince you that leaving is love. It's not. Love is staying. Love is fighting. Love is choosing to be present even when every part of you wants to disappear. Be the father I couldn't be. Break the cycle I couldn't break. Your mother is a saint for putting up with me as long as she did. Your sister deserved better. And you, Jake, you deserved a father who stayed. I'm sorry I couldn't be that. I'm sorry for all of it. I hope you can forgive me, even though I know I don't deserve it. Dad. I set the letter down. My hands were shaking. Sarah was crying openly now. My mother had her arm around her. He was sick, I said quietly. All this time, I thought he just didn't care. But he cared so much it broke him. Yes, my mother said. And Jake, when Sarah called me about the pregnancy, when she told me she was afraid to tell you, I heard your father in her words. That same fear. That same certainty that love means protecting people from yourself. I should have told you then. I should have told you years ago. I'm sorry. I looked at Sarah. Really looked at her. At this woman who'd been so terrified of losing me that she'd hidden the most important thing in our lives. And suddenly I understood. She wasn't manipulating me. She wasn't trying to control me. She was drowning in the same fear that had drowned my father. And I'd almost let it drown us too. I'm not angry anymore, I said. I'm just tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of letting the past make decisions for the future. What do we do now? Sarah asked. We go home. We figure this out. Together. We see a therapist. We learn how to talk about fear instead of letting it talk for us. We break this cycle. Sarah stood up and I stood with her. My mother hugged us both. You're going to be amazing parents, she said. Both of you. Because you're choosing to face this. That's what he couldn't do. That's what makes you different. We drove home together that evening. Sarah in the passenger seat, her hand resting on her belly. Me behind the wheel, my father's letter folded in my pocket. The house looked different when we pulled up. Not like a place I'd run from, but like a place I was choosing to return to. The next few months weren't easy. We went to therapy every week. Sometimes together, sometimes separately. I learned how to talk about fear without letting it control me. Sarah learned how to trust me with her vulnerability instead of hiding it. We painted the nursery together. Picked out names. Had arguments and made up and learned how to be honest even when honesty was scary. When our son was born on a cold January morning, they placed him in my arms and every fear I'd ever had rose up at once. What if I failed him? What if I wasn't enough? What if I had my father's darkness buried somewhere inside me, waiting to surface? But then he opened his eyes and looked at me, and I made him a promise. Hey, little man. I'm your dad. And I'm going to mess up sometimes. I'm going to be scared sometimes. But I'm never going to run. I'm going to stay. I'm going to fight. I'm going to show up every single day, even on the days when I don't feel like enough. Because that's what love is. Not perfection. Just presence. The cycle ends here. With you. With us. Sarah was crying in the hospital bed. Happy tears this time. Healing tears. 3 months later, my mother brought over a box of my father's things that his sister had sent. Photos I'd never seen. Letters he'd written but never sent. A journal where he'd documented his struggle with depression. Reading it broke my heart. But it also freed me. Because I realized I wasn't fighting against becoming my father. I was fighting to become myself. And those are two very different battles. Sarah and I still have hard days. Days when the old fears creep back in. Days when we have to remind each other that we're not our parents' mistakes. That we're writing our own story. But we're writing it together. With honesty. With therapy. With the hard work of healing generational wounds. My son will grow up knowing his father stayed. Not because it was easy, but because it mattered. He'll know that his grandfather was sick, not cruel. That mental illness doesn't mean lack of love. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. And maybe that's how we break cycles. Not by being perfect. Not by never being afraid. But by choosing to stay and fight even when every part of us wants to run. By being honest about our wounds instead of pretending they don't exist. By understanding that the people who hurt us were often just scared kids themselves, trying to survive the best way they knew how. My wife hid her pregnancy from me because she thought I'd leave. And you know what? Almost did. Not by walking out the door, but by letting fear build walls between us. I learned that trauma doesn't just hurt us. It teaches us lies about who we are and what we're capable of. My father's lie was that he couldn't stay. My lie was that I couldn't be trusted to. Sarah's lie was that hiding the truth would protect us. But the real truth is this. Love isn't about being perfect or fearless. It's about showing up even when you're terrified. Especially then. Sometimes people hide the truth not to deceive you, but because they're drowning in their own fear. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not run from that fear, but hold their hand and face it together. We didn't get the perfect story, but we got our story. And that's enough. If this story touched you, hit that like button and subscribe to my Reddit diaries for more real stories about the battles we fight within our families. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to break a cycle in your own life? How did you do it? I read every single comment. And remember, wherever you are in the world, whatever you're going through, you're not alone. We're all just trying to figure this out together. See you in the next story.